The former right-wing Prime Minister of Australia, John Howard, said given the chance he could not vote for Donald Trump, declaring the former US president's refusal to accept the 2020 election had effectively made him unfit, saying his behaviour had not been compatible with democracy.
I think Donald Trump should have left the field when the umpire's finger went up. In other words, I think his refusal to accept the result of the last election and various attempts to overturn that result were not compatible with democracy.
Meanwhile, here in the US, and in a further blow to the disgraced former president, more than 100 former Republican national security officials and members of Congress have endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris for president, citing grave concerns about Donald Trump's ability to serve another term. In a joint letter released on Wednesday, these officials described Trump as unfit to serve again as president, and praised Harris for possessing the qualities necessary to lead the country, despite potential policy disagreements. The signatories, representing administrations from Republican presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and even Donald Trump himself, were joined by officials from Democratic administrations, including those of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. The letter emphasized the need for a president who is principled, serious and steady, qualities they argue that Trump lacks. The group criticized Donald Trump for what they described as dangerous qualities, including an unhealthy affinity for authoritarian figures like Vladimir Putin of Russia, and a contempt for the norms of decent, ethical, and lawful behavior. As president, the letter read, he promoted daily chaos in government, praised our enemies, undermined our allies, politicized the military, disparaged our veterans, prioritized his personal interest over American interests, and betrayed our values, democracy, and this country's founding documents. The letter's scathing critique also addressed Donald Trump's role in inciting the January 6 attack on the Capitol, saying he violated his oath of office and brought danger to our country. The former officials echoed Mike Pence's recent assertion that anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. The letter follows a wave of Republicans crossing party lines to endorse Kamala Harris. Notable figures, including former Vice President Dick Cheney and his daughter Liz Cheney, have said that they will vote for Harris, alongside former Representative Adam Kinzinger and other high-profile Republicans. Among the 111 signatories are former defense secretaries, CIA directors, and former World Bank president and a former governor. While the letter recognized concerns about some positions advocated by the left wing of the Democratic Party and acknowledged critiques of the Biden-Harris administration, it ultimately argued that any potential concerns about Harris pale in comparison to the risks posed by another Trump presidency.
John Howard worked alongside US presidents of both political stripes, Republican and Democrat, and though he's predisposed to one side of politics, not this time.
In normal circumstances, I would unhesitatingly favour a Republican victory, but there are reasons that prevent me doing that on this occasion.
Dick, how are you? John.
Dick Cheney, a former Republican US Vice President under George W. Bush, going further in recent days, endorsing Kamala Harris, saying Trump can never be trusted with power again.
Is that a sentiment that you endorse?
Well, I've stated in that fashion, in the abstract, of course it is.
And then there's Donald Trump's own former officials, including his own cabinet members, warning against his return to power. Mark Esper, Trump's former defense secretary, labelled him a threat to democracy, while John Bolton, Trump's ex-national security advisor, called him unfit to be president. These detractors, who witnessed Trump's conduct during his time in office, are delivering stark warnings about the dangers they believe his re-election would pose not just to the country, but to the world as a whole. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals delivered straight to your door. Meet your wellness goals with chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never-frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great-tasting meals. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Make your day delicious. From breakfast to dessert, stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Head to factormeals.com/5minute50 and use code 5minute50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box. That's code 5minute50 at factormeals.com/5minute50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. Mark Esper, fired by Trump after the 2020 election, has since become one of his most vocal critics. He clashed with Trump over the use of military force during civil unrest following George Floyd's death in 2020. In a recent interview, Esper reiterated his warning that Trump is a threat to democracy, adding, "There's a lot to be concerned about." A growing list of former Trump aides has also spoken out against him. Sarah Matthews, former White House communications director, Alyssa Farah Griffin, Cassidy Hutchinson, an aide to former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. They've been especially vocal in opposing their former boss. And these people are all Republicans, and they all wanted Donald Trump to win. Griffin said fundamentally a second term would mean the end of American democracy as we know it, and I don't say that lightly. John Kelly, Trump's former chief of staff, issued one of the harshest critiques in a statement, calling Trump a person who admires autocrats and murderous dictators, and someone who has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. John Kelly is a lifelong military man, highly decorated and highly trustworthy, a true patriot. Other outspoken critics include Olivia Troy, former advisor to Mike Pence, former press secretary Stephanie Grisham, both of whom did not vote for Trump in 2020. Bill Barr, Trump's former attorney general, has also criticized his ex-boss, calling him a consummate narcissist who constantly engages in reckless conduct that puts his political followers and the conservative agenda at risk. Former Republican presidential candidate Asa Hutchinson said he will not endorse Trump. He said, "I've not endorsed Donald Trump for president and I will not do so." Hutchinson argued that the former president had disqualified himself on January 6, 2021, when a mob of his supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol, and that Trump continues to undermine our democracy by defending the actions of that dark day. He said, regretfully, Donald Trump has redefined the GOP in his image and has put personal ego above the common good. He also accused Trump of embracing Russian President Vladimir Putin over the Ukrainian people, leaning into isolationism by abandoning NATO and US leadership on the world stage, and endorsing economic protectionism with his plan to impose tariffs on US allies and adversaries, a formula that top economists have said will end up costing the US consumer. And finally, the former US President George W. Bush, a Republican through and through, a man who took us to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, one of the most hated former Republican presidents to those who never supported him or supported those illegal wars. He himself does not plan to make an endorsement or voice how he or his wife, former First Lady Laura Bush, will vote in the presidential election in November. The former Republican president does not want to endorse the candidate for Republican president. Just think about that. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.